First of all, I've chosen to delete half of the slides I usually would present because, I think talking about this case study is 20 minutes is absolutely enough. And so I will skip some slides. So I'm talking about the economic freedom study and its impact on policymaking. So this is our case study as an Naumann Foundation. And this is our big volume. It's the 2013 annual report. So it's pretty up to date. And the data is from 2011. And we publish it every year. And this is our premium product. So we are well known for it. And we are trying to influence policy for it. And the second part of my presentation, I'm talking about we're trying to apply the concept of the economic freedom of the world study to the regional level, so the federal state level. And this is tricky. You know, we have something in Germany, the evil of all. It's called the financial equalization scheme between the Länder. This means that countries who are working good and doing good economic policy, like Bavaria, Baden-Württemberg and Hessen, are punished and have to pay. And countries like Bremen, Berlin, who are doing very poor economic policy, they are simply financed by the others who are working hard. So this is our fiscal financial equalization scheme, called in German Länderfinanzausgleich. And this is always causing a lot of debate and trouble. Countries who have to pay are doing so much court trials in order to stop this scheme and in order to stop the redistribution. So, and there will be a debate because in 2019 there will be a cut and a new system has to be established. Okay. The whole idea was Milton Friedman, the godfather of economic freedom of the world. And he had in 2012, it was his 100th birthday, when it would have been 100 years old, when he didn't die some years ago. And the first data was gathered in 1980, and then the data was spread over for 120 countries, and now we have 152 countries covered by this index of economic freedom. So this is, I think, one of the biggest empirical studies in the world. What we do? We measure the correlation between economic freedom and other factors of life, other factors of quality of life and political progress, and we measure it in quartile in order to find the correlation. And this economic freedom study is done by a network of 52 research institutions. The leading institution is the Fraser Institution in Canada, and we are part of it, and we publish this study since 1996. So we have now empirical data for about 31 years. This is a unique selling point. What is economic freedom? First of all, personal choice, voluntary exchange coordinated by markets, so also the capability to enter markets, very important. The freedom to enter and compete in markets, protection of persons and their property from aggression by others, and of course, this is a final question, to which degree policies and institutions support these elements of economic freedom. This is our key question. After we first published this study, numerous other scientific studies used the data from the economic freedom of the world and to examine the impact of it and also to criticize it. And there was also a development of a methodology. Of course, if there's criticism, you have to react to it. But we had the first impact is a big impact on science. It was the first one. The components of the index: size of government, legal system, property rights, sound money, freedom to trade internationally, and regulation. Keep this in mind. Before I present the federal the study on the federal level, we won't see all 5 components of the indexes again, because we can't apply it on the federal level, on the state level. So, on the state level, on the Länder level. So this is different, the overall index from the index for the state level. Okay. This is a picture of the economic freedom worldwide. You see on the picture the blue one. This is a quartile of the most free countries, of course, Northern America, Australia, the Scandinavian countries, Germany, Spain, Chile, Great Britain, 2 or 3 Arabic countries, and there's, of course, problems remaining in Africa. Africa is one of the big losers of the economic freedom of the world index. And I can also tell you this will have an impact on the development aid and also development aid strategy. Because if you're pouring money in a country where institutional problems are still existing, it's a waste of money. For example, Hong Kong is the best country in the world. It has a ranking, the first ranking, and it has an index value. 10 is the highest, and 0 is no freedom, no economic freedom. 10 is the most economic freedom. And Hong Kong, for example, reaches 8.97. I was just asked about the position of Italy. Italy is performing poor regarding to European comparisons. Italy has about 6 point, etc. Germany has about 7.7, the overall index. So a kind of a good degree of economic freedom. These are the results, of course. It's obvious, due to the financial crisis, economic freedom fell down. So if you look after 2007, there was an overall backlash in economic freedom in nearly every country. But now it's improving again, so it's accelerating a little bit. And you see, in 1980, the first year when we collected the data for economic freedom, it was pretty low. So countries developed itself, and I think the publishing of economic freedom study also put a little pressure on some governments to cooperate, to give us their data, and also to do a different economic policy. Winners and losers. This is from this is latest data from 2011. You see again at the bottom is Myanmar and Venezuela. Also USA lost, of course, the reaction of financial crisis. Hong Kong as the first, the champion in the ranking, lost also. Germany gained a little bit. Hungary made a big progress. Uganda, Israel, Peru. So there are some countries are really doing very good. And the point is, economic freedom is not a thing for itself. It pays in form of higher income, less poverty, less unemployment, etc. This is the first outcome. As I told you, we bundle the results in 4 quartiles. And you see on this picture, the quartile, the first one, the first column, the most free countries, the most free economic countries in the world. They have per capita income of $36,466 a year. So they are better off. And just to avoid a tricky question, of course, in this data, the purchasing power parity is calculated. So the different price level of the countries is already incorporated in the data. And the most unfree countries only have a per capita income of 4,382. So you see, economic freedom is a very good result, and there's a very good impact on the income of the countries and of the people. It's an obvious correlation. The next one is economic freedom and growth. Here again, a clear correlation. Here again, purchasing power parameters reflect the different price level in the countries. And see the growth rate of the gross domestic product. It's 3.69% in the most free countries, and it's only 1.9% in the most unfree countries. I won't forget that 3 or 4 years ago, we had a kind of, I would say, there was one sign that, for example, the BRIC countries, Russia, India, China, Brazil, they had a high growth, but not the same according degree in economic freedom. So in 3 or 4 years ago, we had like this column was higher than this one. So, and this was due to a huge economic growth in those countries, and we expected at that point of time that this will use a clear correlation in the future again after these countries are losing this fascinating and very big economic growth, and in fact it turned out to be so. Also interesting, the income of the poorest. This means the poorest 10% of the population in a country, again adjusted by purchasing power parities. And here it is very obvious. On the right side, the big column with $11,382 is the income, the per capita income in the most economic free countries. On the left side, the 1,209 is the per capita income of the 10 poorest percent of the population in the most unfree countries. Also a very, very clear correlation. Interesting, it's not only about unemployment, income, wealth, etc. It's also about the chances of women. For example, if you compare economic freedom and the opportunities of women, it's obvious that in the most free countries, it's the right column, the chances of women are the best. And if you're regarding the next slide, this is economic freedom and alphabetization. The degree of alphabetization is in most economic free countries the best. And you see here the difference between women and men. In the most unfree economic countries, there is a gap. And this gap is lowering in the most free countries. So this is also a matter of equality between women and men. So if you are a woman, you are better off if you are living in an economic free country. Now I'm coming to the federal level. This is a study, and if you compare it, this is a big one, very big one, and this is a smaller one. And the point is, we can't use the same data and the same indicators that we can use in the big level on the national level. So the state level is different. Of course, we use the size of government, government consumption percentage of GDP, social expenditure and percentage of GDP, financial assistance of the lender in percentage of GDP. I highlighted this in blue because this is tricky, because this is influenced by the dirty financial equalization scheme. And the second dimension is taxes. The weighted average rate of trade tax. Trade tax is not a value-added tax. It can be translated, in German it's Gewerbesteuer. So it's a tax that companies have to pay to do their business. And it differs from federal state, from lender to lender. So this is something you can measure. The second one, the revenue of income and corporate tax before financial equalization in percentage of GDP. Here, there is no different income tax and corporate tax according to the state level, but the tax administration is different, and we can measure this with the index. And the third and the last dimension, we have only 3 dimensions to build up this index on the Länder level. It's obligatory social insurance contributions and social assistance, welfare. And there, of course, for example, 3B, the share of welfare recipients and percent of population, there's a big difference. For example, in Berlin, the majority of the population is dependent on pension funds, social funds, transfer, etc. So it's already, yes, it's kipped. Was ist kippen? Kippen. Shifts. Yes, there's already a shift in such a state like Berlin, where the majority usually is voting also left. So, and here you can really explain it, and there's differences between the federal states. Okay, level of social assistance, of course. So what is the result if economic freedom of the German Länder? Here you have all Länder, all federal states, and it's the data for 2010. It also means that we don't do this regional study, we don't do it every year. We don't have the capacity. We do it every 3-4 years, it depends on. And this, the last one, is from 2012, and the data is from 2010. And as I told you, the highest degree of economic freedom is in Bayern, Bavaria, and Baden-Württemberg. And a little bit surprising, but it's okay, Rhineland-Palatinate is performing well, even they had long-term social democratic government. Berlin, 4.51 at the bottom, and the big exception in this picture is Saxony. Yes. We examined the data. More and more we did that. But it is. The degree of economic freedom in Saxony is not so good. But Saxony is doing economically well. So this is the only exception in the ranking. But the point is, we are mobilizing citizens. We have to be credible. We can calculate our data or our study according to the needs of the Liberal Party in Germany. So if the Liberal Party is in government in a certain federal state and the outcome is not so good, it's like this. We can't fake the data. So we would be incredible. We would be losing credibility. The next picture. Here, of course, the first ones is Bavaria and Baden-Württemberg. They are always at the top, and Berlin is always at the bottom. And the others are kind of developing more and less. But one thing is interesting. For example, this one, this is Hamburg. And Hamburg, from 2002 to 2007, something like that, they made very good economic policy. And, of course, we told them that they made good economic policy. We get criticism because they said, how do they good economic policy? The liberals were not in government. I said, okay, it happened. So they did good economic policy. They improved their position in the ranking index of economic freedom comparing to the other Bundesländer. So that is okay. Here you see the ranking. Again, Bavaria and Baden-Württemberg are only changing first position or second position. And Berlin started before German reunification. In 1994, they had a position of 11. And after the new federal states from the east are coming in this ranking, they're going directly to the bottom. They even didn't try to maintain their position. And the big exceptions are mainly every federal state from Hamburg, Hessen, Lower Saxony, North Rhine-Westphalia, etc. They are nearly in the same position or one degree higher or 1 degree lower than they started, except Thuringia at the bottom. Thuringia started in 1994 on the 15th position. And Saxony-Anhalt, it started at 16th position. And now Saxony-Anhalt is at 13 and Thuringia is at 12th position. This is a relative success. And same again, Saxony was pretty low and very poor performance in 1994, and it's still performing worse in 2010. So this ranking is a kind of doing a competition, you know, initiate a competition between the government, the economic policy of the federal states. What is the impact for political decision making? It's the basis for wealth and prosperity of your country. This impact for political decision making, we use this slide basically to influence the development policy of the Federal Ministry of Economic Cooperation and Development. And during the last 4 years, there was a very good cooperation. And the minister, Dirk Niebel, who is now some weeks now in office, but he will lose his position because Liberal Party is weed out, exempted from the parliament, of course also government. They used our data, and there was an impact, a measurable impact on their strategy, which country should get development aid or which country shouldn't get development aid, or in which form they get a development aid. Stay away from protectionism, of course. Develop a roadmap to economic freedom. This is the first step. And enhance cooperation with economic open countries and your neighbors. And this means also a better cooperation of development aid, of economic cooperation, etc., with those countries which are open to free trade, etc., and which do which do a good economic policy. But the final question, I'm coming to the end. Did we reach a policy change? The German economics minister used our arguments, especially the liberal ones, of course. But it's hard to find a concrete policy measure on the governmental level in this respect, for example, the economics ministry, to say that is just happening because we published a study. It is hard to find a proof for that. But we promoted deregulation of labor markets, even when a social democratic and green government did this. And we supported the freedom to trade internationally, of course. We were successful to demonstrate that there are positive effects of globalization, at least. You know, that there's a big debate that globalization is only harming society and only bad, but we demonstrated that it's good and have positive effects. And we influenced, of course, scientific discussion. This is a goal which truly achieved. And we also made it that the Economic Freedom of the World Index is the most recognized index of economic freedom concepts. There are a lot of concepts, Heritage Foundation, Freedom House, etc. But the Economic Freedom of the World Context Index is that study was mostly recognized and cited. So this is the basic reference for economic policy. Thank you.